Joining us now is Dr. Shmuel Katz, one of the founders of Stand With Us and a leading activist in the United States for Israel advocacy. Shalom.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being with you.
So after years of the Trump administration implementing Middle East peace initiatives focusing on normalizing relations with Arab countries that surround Israel, it seems that the Biden administration is ushering in new policies based on old paradigms that have not worked in the past. They propose a two-state solution and the establishment of a Palestinian-only consulate in Jerusalem. Should Israel be concerned with this shifted policy? And how should the Israeli government react to this proposed change of focus?
Thank you very much for this very important question. I think that we have to look at any situation, even if it is now at the present, in the correct perspective. Should it be historical or practical? So that we should be able to plan and consider the correct move forward. If you look at the idea of two-state solution, it's a great idea if it works. And if you talk about two-state solution, you need to have two parties to agree to the idea. Historically, the two-state solution was already tested, and it was tested several times. You have the original two-state solution, which was done in the very early days of the modern state of Israel, even before the establishment of the state of Israel. Probably most of people forgot already, but there were some very important legal determination of the right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel under modern legal terms, which was related to the agreements which were signed and recommended by the League of Nations in 1920 in the San Remo Conference, which is a legal document who got inspiration also from the Balfour Declaration of 1917 to establish a homeland for the Jewish people in the land of Israel, in their ancestral homeland. This situation brought to the international community a message which was very well known, and it is still known by some people, because those who are not informed have no idea about the process and what was involved in it. The Jewish people who were connected to the land of Israel for thousands of years, with the uninterrupted presence of Jews in the land of Israel for so much time. At the same time, there were many people who were coming and going through the Middle East for centuries. The latest serious leadership which was controlling the land of Israel was the Ottoman Empire, which controlled the region for 400 years. They lost the war during the World War I, and the British and the French were empowered by the United Nations. At the time was a League of Nations, to have a mandate to the land of Israel and the region which was controlled by the Ottoman Empire in order to hand over the land to their ancestral owners. And in fact, they recognized that the Jews have the right to the land of Israel, and the British were in charge of managing that region. What happened at the time is in 1920, the League of Nations accepted the San Remo decision. But in 1922, the British violated that mandate by giving about 80% of the land to a totally new government, which was the Hashemite Kingdom of Transjordan. They created a new country on 80% of the land of Israel, which was supposed to belong to the Jews, but they gave it to an Arab country. This was a first major two-state solution in the region. So what was left for the Jews were another less than 20% of the promised land, based on the normal new legal decision of the League of Nations. The Jews accepted it, the Arabs rejected it, and there was a conflict which was existing at that time, which the Arab state did not want to create a Jewish state in their own ancestral homelands of the Jewish people. The United Nations in 1947 decided, you know what, let's divide the remaining 20% of the land between Arabs and Jews, so we'll create a state of Israel on 50% of the 20% of the land of Israel. The Jews accepted it, the Arabs did not. So in 1947, once the British mandate terminated, the British left the country. The state of Israel was born on their ancestral homeland, and it was declared as an independent Jewish state, which was recognized by the international community. So it was a recognized state by the international community, and it was declared by the Jewish people that accepted even the fraction of their ancestral homeland. And guess what? The next day, the state of Israel was invaded by its neighbors, the Arab countries, in order to destroy it. And it's not that it is just an idea, maybe. No, they declared it openly that we are going to destroy this state and this will be the end of it. So the two-state solution was already tried. After this event, when Israel was successful to survive this attack on its own existence in 1948, there were two major attempts which followed it to destroy the state of Israel. It was in 1967 and in 1973. In both occasions, the neighboring Arab countries decided to invade the state of Israel and destroy it. Despite the fact that they tried to destroy the state of Israel, Israel managed to survive and to grow and to share its own wonderful achievements with the rest of the world. And in fact, some of the Arab states in the neighborhood understood that it's a very good thing for the international community to have the state of Israel with all the wonderful things that it brought to the world. And therefore Israel made a peace accord with Egypt, made a peace accord with Jordan, and recently they made a peace accord in the Abraham Accords with the additional 4 Arab countries, the UAE, and Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. And we're testing the information, and it seems that it works very well. In some of the countries, it's not a wonderful, warm peace, but it's going towards it. You'll be able to move towards a peaceful solution if you'll educate the kids for peace, and you make sure that all involved are understanding that it is important to maintain the peace to the benefit of all. Because Israel is pro-Palestinian, pro-Arabs, pro-Jews, pro-Christians, pro-any good person who wants to live in peace to make the future of their own children a better place. So all these attempts to try and make peace also with the Arab Palestinians so far totally failed. So Israel was very happy to make peace accords and agreements with the Arab Palestinians, and in fact Israel did it several times, to be rejected every single time. The international community supported Israel with all these efforts to make peace with the Arab Palestinians. And therefore, it's very difficult to say that two-state solution is going to be the resolution of the conflict in the Middle East. The two-state idea is only one little spot in a much bigger issue that we have to address before going into that direction. If you force a two-state solution on the countries in the land of Israel or anywhere, the end result is going to be disastrous, because if you don't change the education and you don't change the attitude of the people and you don't change the understanding that you have to respect each other, forcefully stating that this is one state and this is the other state won't be to any positive resolution, because everybody is going to lose at the end of the day. So far, the Arab-Palestinian leadership see the two-state solution as a very simple project. We eliminate the Jews from the land of Israel, so we may have two states, one Hamastan and one Fatah land. So we have two-state solution with two Arab states who are going to destroy the state of Israel, and the international community is going to lose one of its best supporters in the Middle East, with all the international support that Israel has provided to the international community on military advisory systems, on research and development and everything which goes with it.
Now, given these important historical facts, now that the Biden administration is promoting the idea of a two-state solution, what course of action should Bennett and Lapid take toward Biden's change of policy?
Thank you very much for this question as well, because it's very important. It goes to the core of the diplomatic platform, which set the stage for the next step. Unfortunately, when you have a radical group that you're giving them things for free, they won't consider it as a concession. They'll consider it as capitulation. What happens is that if you give away part of your ancestral homeland for nothing, they consider it as a gift from heaven, which they don't have to deal with it at all. If you give away Jerusalem to people who claim to have ownership of it, despite the fact that historically, anybody who knows anything about whatever happened in the Middle East will know that the Jews have connection to the city of Jerusalem for thousands of years, from the times of King David. King David moved the capital of his own country from Hebron to Jerusalem, even before the establishment of the major temples of Jerusalem by his son Solomon and the consequent presence of the Jews in the region. If somebody wants to give away all that ancestral values and heritage, people will consider you to be a person who is not serious, a person who has no backbone, who doesn't belong there, doesn't believe in where we stand. So giving away part of the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people to the Arab Palestinian at this stage will undermine any possibility of creating a peaceful resolution of the conflict, because they'll consider it only a first step towards liquidating the state of Israel in its entirety. And therefore it's going to be a lose-lose situation for anybody who wants to have peace in the Middle East. And this is, by the way, against American law. The Americans passed a legislative law relating the city of Jerusalem to the people of Israel, and this was implemented recently when Jerusalem was recognized and the American embassy was moved to the city of Jerusalem.
Now, on another issue, what advice can you give Jewish parents who hear their children who return home from their college campuses repeating anti-Israel rhetoric such as Israel is an occupying power and the like?
This is an extremely important question because it goes to the core of the survival of freedom in general, not only of Israel, the freedom in general of the international community as we know it. The first step that you have to share with your kids is the importance of learning the facts, not from those who are trying to deceive you and to promote their own propaganda. You should go and look for the real facts, real historical facts, and try to figure out who are the people who are trying to deceive you. Unfortunately, there are too many master puppeteers who are trying to redirect the attention of the international community to a certain way of thinking, even though it has nothing to do with the reality or the facts. For example, in this relationship to the history of the Jewish people, it's very simple. Read the Bible. It's an old document. Nobody disputed it yet. And it's there. You can read it. You don't have to be religious for that, but you can read it. You'll find the connection of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. In addition, you can go into some kind of a modern text. You can find many of them, but make sure that you find the accurate information. This is an organization, it's called Stand With Us, who prepared a lot of good material, factual material, and you can find them on standwithus.com/booklets. And you can read more than 60 booklets addressing a variety of important topics. Not political topics, but factual points, which you'll be able to read and understand it in multiple languages, not only in English. It will give you some kind of a background about the practical information which you can learn from. In addition, you have the Jewish Virtual Library, which is addressing the myth and facts of the Arab-Israeli conflict. You can go there and read a variety of topics when they mention what Israel is accused of and what is the real truth as it's related to that question. Once you're well informed about the basic information, you'll be able to stand on a solid ground to be able to face reality. Because if people are abusing you and accusing you on doing the wrong things, you won't have to be apologetic. You don't have to accuse yourself. You just can stand on solid ground and tell them, I'm sorry, but the facts that you're trying to share me are pure fantasy. Let me tell you what is the real fact. And you can check it out for yourself. Don't believe me only. It's you're the one who is in charge of your own happiness, and find out what you're dealing with. Because this problem is not only a problem of the Jewish people. This is a problem of the free world. Because whatever happened to the Jews never ends up with the Jews. Pay attention to who are the people who are promoting this propaganda. Sooner or later, they'll go against you personally, because you cannot support a terrorist economically and politically and hope to have wonderful people who are going to be an asset to the world. If you do that, what you're going to get is a better financed and better connected politically group of terrorists who will cause you only trouble. Examples are many. Look what happened with Iran. You empower Iran and you get all the subversion in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Yemen, etc. They are the biggest supporters of international terror across the globe. Look what happened in Afghanistan. We defeated the Taliban 20 years ago. We defeated ISIS 20 years ago. We gave the Taliban and ISIS military equipment, freedom, by removing, without any second thoughts, the entire American presence in Afghanistan. And guess what? The Taliban is king again. Look what they do to women. Look what they do to children. This is true also about the Palestinians. If you empower them, they feel more aggressively oriented to protect their ideology. And look what they do to their own children. What do they do to their own women? They're using them as human shields. And you want to protect these people who are trying to destroy the neighborhood, and they won't stop with the neighborhood. Their ideology is a global radical Islamic ideology which will aim towards changing the entire world into their domain. So it's very important for you to know that if they're trying to put down Israel, they're not trying to put down only the state of Israel. They're trying to put down everything that you believe in it. Because Israel today is based on truth and on facts in an ancestral homeland. They provide the international community with a huge amount of military intelligence that otherwise the United States and Europe and everybody else will not have. Israel has a major research and development which is sharing it with the world. You know, these advanced American airplanes that Israel bought were improved in the states of Israel to the benefit of the Americans. And why Israel is doing it? Because they want good to prevail. They want to help the Arab Palestinians. They want to help the free people wherever they can do it. Israel has a major program to help disaster wherever it happens in the entire world. Look what happened recently in Florida. There was a building which collapsed. So Israeli military assistance arrived to the United States to help with the design and the planning of trying to save whatever can be saved. Israel helped Turkey. Israel helped Japan. Israel helped Haiti. You know, there are kids in Haiti who are called Israel in recognition of the help that the state of Israel provided the Haitians after the disastrous earthquake, because Israel managed to bring into Haiti a military hospital even before the United States. And they started working to help the local population with whatever they knew and whatever they have in order to make the world a better place. So we should not succumb to terrorists. We should make sure that we support the just cause of the Jewish people and the state of Israel.
Okay, Dr. Shmuel Katz, one of the founders of Stand With Us and a leading activist in the United States for Israel advocacy. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure sharing some knowledge with you, and I hope many people will learn from that to go on the correct track.